Hey y'all, Mac here. I decided to make a build guide for Discharge, and before I say anything else, I actually don't want this to be that much of a build guide, more so than a showcase. I think guiding others to play this build is kind of misleading. I do think it's fun if you really want to make self-cast Discharge work. I think this is the best way to do it currently, besides it just being like a 0 HP boss killer. But the actual amount of investment you need for this build is a little astronomical compared to what it actually gives you, in all honesty. So I really want to preface that by saying that this is not an amazing build. It is not meta-defining or even meta at all. However, I do think there are a lot of ups to the build that I find really appealing, hence why I built it. I will go over some of the cons as well, and I will start off by saying that this is not a weak starter. No, it is extremely expensive. I think it's well over $1.5 now. If you combine all the costs together. Alright, so let's get into the basics of this build. So first and foremost, it is a kind of big hit one-shot build for most content in the game, most maps, and most like T16 map bosses. What it's really built around is making our discharge hit as hard as possible for its one hit. And we're doing that by stacking 33 total charges, so it's going to be 11 of each charge, and that's going to make our discharge fairly big. I think around 40 mil average hit, but I'll double check and it'll be in the PoE. But basically what we're running is a discharge linked with increased AoE. You can swap this out for a different gem for bossing. But the increased AoE comes with more damage, and it's also going to be so much more AoE that it's a lot comfier to boss with. I think that you could, however, still swap it out with a conk effect for even more damage if you want to just hug the boss. Power charge on crit here is just giving us 44% more damage, as well as power charge on crit. This way you can maybe just chain discharges. You don't have to cast Stormbrand in between. We're taking in Power 4, Awakened Ellie Focus, and Trinity. I don't really care about elements. Our Stormbrand applies a small shock, but it's relatively negligible. The actual playstyle is just putting Stormbrands to get more power charges. Whenever this Stormbrand crits, it's going to generate power charges. With Inya's Epiphany, we're going to get a chance to get the maximum power charges when we gain just one, which makes it a lot better to just like you throw it on and there's a good chance it'll just hit max power charges instantly. That way you'll have a 33 charge discharge. As far as other links go, we need Swift Affliction and Less Duration with Lightning Warp and faster casting. This makes our Lightning Warp extremely fast to cast, so we can basically blink across the map with this skill, which is really nice. On top of that, it also is mandatory to have Swift Affliction and Less Duration, supporting our Aspect of the Cat. Aspect of the Cat, basically every time we proc Cat's agility, it's going to give us our 11 Frenzy and Endurance charges. This is our main source of charge generation. As far as Aspmark and Righteous Fire, I'm linking them with Empower just to make them a little bit stronger. I am able to sustain a permanent level 20 Righteous Fire, which is really nice, to give us 41% more spell damage just up front. I think this is 100% worth it, and hence also why Mage Blood is so strong on this build. Otherwise, we have our good old Castle on Death Portal setup with Vitality. For Stormbrand, we want Stormbrand of Indecision, so we get the quality bonus of dealing 10% more damage against branded enemies. This is mainly for bossing a single target. We put a brand on the boss, it's ticking, we put Assassin's Mark, and we pop Discharge, and it does a lot of damage. Faster casting, we need Power Charge on crit and increased crit strike support to make sure it's always critting. For my auras, I'm running Grace, Clarity with Enlightened Fort, and Zealotry, along with Vitality. You can swap out Zealotry for D-Term if you don't need the damage, and you can get a lot more P max it. And your Fizz max it is actually the lowest defensive on this build, as with most builds. But it's low enough to where I'd say you're occasionally just going to be dying to T17 juiced rares or like massive packs of porcupines. But other than that, that's the gem setup. Again, the playstyle is like really straightforward. You just put a Stormbrand on enemies to get your charges. You get 33 charges, and you just pop Discharge, and then you blink to the next pack, put down a brand, pop Discharge. If you have max power charges, you don't even need to pop brand, but that's kind of up to you. So as far as the items go, I'm running double void batteries. You can actually run a potentiality or eventuality rod with +1 power and endurance charges, as well as +1 power on the explicits. And you can get that with a power charge on crit support mod, so you can get an extra link for your discharge. As it is a staff, you can 6-link it. I think that setup is honestly about the same amount of damage at the end of the day, just because we are getting, 11 times 25. We're getting a decent bit of increased damage from our void batteries, which again makes the flat damage that we scale from the charges all that much higher. And so from the actual void batteries, the damage, the Ellie Pen implicit is actually extremely powerful. Not mandatory, but it is worth having, especially since you're going to be investing so much in the rest of the build anyways. You might as well get the best bang for your buck on these items. The cast speed, I don't really care too much about, but the global crit is pretty important, so I try to get max roll on those. The helmet, I needed 14% spell suppress on this build to hit 100% along with a Watcher's Eye. I think this is really easy to craft, so basically you're just spamming a res essence until you hit T1 spell suppress and an open suffix, and you just basically open suffix craft the aspect of the cat. From that, you can, suffixes can't be changed, reforge life. Ideally, you have an open prefix and a good life roll, and you just throw on increased AoE. And this increased AoE is also helping out the lightning warp just to make it a little bit more fast. But the implicit and the base helmet is actually fairly cheap. I got this one for 60C at the time. It might be a little higher now, but the chance to avoid poison is actually really mandatory for my setup because it gets me poison resist cap. And I'll go over this later because it comes mostly from the tree, but I am full ailment immune. In terms of the amulets, you want a Badge of the Brotherhood. There are two options for implicits. You can either go with Additional Curse, which is a lot more expensive, or you can go any elemental damage leached as life, which is a lot less expensive if you cannot solve leech anywhere else. I'm solving leech with a Watcher's Eye and Vitality, which I think is a better option, as Additional Curse does give us a lot more extra damage, as well as crit caps us with Assassin's Bark on bosses. This also is, for anyone who doesn't know, is how you're getting your maximum frenzy charges. You scale max power charges on this build so that you can match with Badge of the Brotherhood, so I have 11 max frenzy charges, which I otherwise wouldn't have without this item. Replica Feral's Fur is a mandatory item for this build. It basically gives you 0 reservation for aspect of the cat, and you gain your number of maximum frenzy and endurance charges whenever you have cat's agility. So every time this cycles to cat's agility, you get these 11 charges on both. And this is going to be fairly cheap to get without any of the implicits. With a +1 implicit, it's going to run you around 20 div, and with +2, it might run you about the same. +3 currently is 160 div. I got this earlier for cheaper. You can also double Temple Corrupt for +2 if you'd like. That's sort of up to you. Do remember that getting the colors correct on this item is absurdly annoying. Do the jeweler's trick before you link it. So basically get your off colors. I would recommend getting blue all the way on your off colors. But alternatively, you can also use Tainted Chromatics, which getting 5 blue with Tainted Chromatics and 1 red is also not super cheap. So the way I did it was Tainted Chromatics. It still cost me several div to actually color it. Now, our ring is going to be an absurd gatekeeper in terms of pricing. A +1 power charge ring currently goes for 130 div. I got this at the time for 80 div. And this ring is going to be mirrored with a Calandra's Touch. This is literally just giving us 2 more extra charges, frenzy charges and power charges, as well as giving us a crap ton of chaos res. I have 50 from this ring, right? And so it's getting mirrored. I'm getting 100% chaos res from this one ring, as well as some life. I need the int on this ring as well. How I crafted this ring was really simple. I just roll essences of spite on it until I hit T2 chaos res, which is the max roll for an item level 71. I had an open suffix, and I just veiled. Suffixes can't be changed. I veiled chaos, and that way we have a chance to hit a veiled suffix. And unveil, ideally hit some sort of res and chaos res, and Suffix 6 can't be changed again. Reforge life till I hit something acceptable. Craft on non-channeling. This is going to be a major power boost. I don't recommend running a ring without +1 power charge. You could go precursors or maybe a unique ring instead. But again, 2 charges is giving us a lot of extra damage. As far as the gloves go, I'm taking Surge Binders. Surge Binders gives us 110% increased damage, as well as the spell crit chance and LE weakness. You can just settle for either spell crit or LE weakness, in which case you don't need to run additional curse. But I still recommend getting both if possible. Assassin's Mark, you can't play with Mark on hit, unfortunately, as it only procs off attacks. So your best bet to get a constant curse going is to get curse on hit on gloves. Inya's Epiphany is where we're going to be socking our auras, so we're taking +4. You can obviously take +2 instead as a budget version. That shouldn't be too expensive. On top of that, we're also getting 55% increased damage from this, and we have that chance to gain maximum power charges, which is really important to make the build feel smooth. Belt, with no further ado, it needs to be Mage Blood. I don't really see this build functioning well without Mage Blood, just because it's solving so many issues the build otherwise wouldn't be able to solve with other items. And that's going to be Ellie Res. We need this to make melding work. I am stun immune with this flask. This gets me elemental ailment immune with Storm Shroud, and obviously move speed. This is getting me crit capped along with this, and it's also giving us that life regen to be able to sustain our Righteous Fire, as well as giving us some armor for PDR and crit, right? I think Wine of the Prophet's your best choice here. You can technically run an increased effect Bottle of Faith if you'd like to do that instead for bossing. But some of the mods in Wine of the Prophet, like double damage, will just make your discharge like one-shot bosses. It's pretty fun. As far as the actual tree goes, there's a lot of like pathing options you could do if you aren't doing the cluster setup, but I don't really see you being able to fit in Melding of the Flesh without doing the cluster setup. So how we're going to break this down is I'm going to go over all the unique jewels first and the rare jewels, clusters, and then some of the modifications to the tree and key nodes. So the jewels that I'm taking for this, Storm Shroud gives you avoid elemental ailments based on your avoid being shocked. And since we have the max amount of avoid being shocked on a flask, this in and of itself gets us elemental ailment immune. Okay. We're getting bleed immune from tattoos, and we are getting poison immune with that helmet mod and other tattoos as well. A little bit of reduced curse effect as well is nice to have, but this is not obviously mandatory if you need the int. Besides that, obviously, we're taking Melding of the Flesh. This lets us get to 90% all max res, but it comes at the cost of requiring a lot of extra resistances spec'd around the tree and from items. Since we're running so many uniques, we actually can't get reses from our items, so we need to get it from a flask, as well as some of these large clusters. And so what are these large clusters? Well, they are some increased effect with Ellie Res, Life, and Attributes on this side, Chaos Res, All Res, Life on this side. And these are all just giving us increased spell damage. This is a lot of percent increase. I think a big issue is finding additional ways to scale flat damage and crit. As we're getting so much percent increased, it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of DRing, right? So, we're only getting linear scaling in this build for the most part, which is why the damage is capped at a ceiling of around like 25, 28 mil. But yeah, this is your way of solving attributes, is full specking a cluster like this, and then solving Chaos Res and just general reses from both with this. You also get some life from this, which is just really nice, as you're not taking a lot of life nodes anywhere else. My Watcher's Eye is a 3-modder, so I get Ellie Pen with crits from Zealotry. I get Damage Leech's Life with Vitality, that's mandatory, otherwise we don't have Leech. And 15% Suppress, that's also mandatory with Grace. That in total gets me Spell Suppress capped, I get Leech, and I get a lot more damage. But yeah, with this build, I am Chaos Res capped as well as 90% All Res capped with a little bit extra in case I get hit by a LE Weakness Curse. I'm still 90%. The rare jewels on this build, we're running quite a few of them, so we have all of these. They are all going to have one specific, like very specific mods. So I take double crit multi max life, and max res. The max res needs to be either cold or lightning as you're approaching the tree from this side. So you can take either these ones and scale max lightning, or you can take these ones and scale max cold. I believe max cold is going to be better to scale, but it's honestly, it doesn't matter because you can harvest reforge the percent reses on these back and forth with a res swap. So it's, as long as it's not fractured, you can just buy these jewels with any max res. I believe each of these jewels cost anywhere, like with good rolls, cost around 10 div each last time I checked, which was around a week ago. Besides that, taking Rune Grafted Treachery, just to get some mana reservation, it's nice to have extra mana available with this build. Besides that, Mage Bane to get Spell Suppress capped, and we are taking Rune Binder for quality of life, just so we can have multiple up. We're scaling a lot of like overcharge, a lot of reduced skill costs, because discharge costs like 67 mana, even with the 2 non-channeling crafts. And yeah, power charges, life, not too much more. This reservation wheel is also like really powerful. Take it. The increased damage for each aura actually has a lot of value. If you don't want to spec that, you can just put an extra point in here, and that's going to be okay. That way you can get more attributes or reses as you need. But yeah, besides that, the actual build itself is able to do T17s pretty easily. I will die, I'd say probably like once every 5 or 6 maps, just to like rares or to like big porcupine packs, because I'm deciding to run Zealotry. I can kill the boss fairly quickly, anywhere from like 10 to 20 seconds on Fortress, and most of the content I've been doing has been Scarab farming on this character. I think it's pretty solid for bossing. I wouldn't play it in most of like the Ubers though, just because you are relying more on Leech. You can play a Life Flask, but your damage can be pretty awkward, and you have certain timings on your damage, so you can like cast at a bad time and just miss out on a lot of damage on bosses. I'm sure if you really want a boss, I would just suggest playing like the one-shot versions, which have like 0 HP, but you can just like truly one-shot a boss. They're up in like 200 to 300 mil DPS, but there are also other builds like Icicle Mines that do that better. So I do believe that this build currently, as it stands, Discharge is a good like all-rounder if you're willing to put the insane amount of currency into it. But there are a lot of downsides, and I don't really want to make a budget version, as I think the budget version will feel very bad to play, and I don't recommend anyone try the budget versions. They, again, really just, I don't think they're going to be all that good. You can potentially play an Ignite version, not on Slayer, on Elementalist instead. I have played early leagues with that, and I do think it is somewhat playable for things like Expedition. It's pretty great, because you just pop once, you run away, and everything dies to Ignite. But it's not going to have the same like impact as just being able to click Discharge once and blowing up the screen. So I do, again, prefer the Slayer version. But nonetheless, yeah, this build has been a lot of fun to build around. With the new graphs, there's not really too much to play around with. I'm just taking like AoE and max life on these, and the defensive ones. But you can maybe play around with those, find something that works better. I just am currently done with this build, and I'm going to be moving on to one final build of the league, which is going to focus more on like shrine stacking and stuff, and that one should be a lot of fun to make. I'm going to be playing off meta skill with it and trying to make it work. But yeah, until then, please feel free to drop any questions about the build down in the description. I'd like to give thanks to the original build creator and theory crafter for this setup. I used his inspiration for this build quite a lot. I'll put his channel down in the description. It's going to be Path of Chagrin. And yeah, until next time, ciao.